and welcome back to Reclaiming America. I'm Greta, and I am here with my brilliant but sometimes troublesome hosts, Dan Roman and Bill Moore. Say Happy New Year to everybody.
I would be the brilliant one.
No, you beat me to it. I was going to say I'm brilliant. He's the troublesome one. Although
I got you first.
Although he did get us in trouble on TikTok. I was just telling him off air. We got violated on TikTok, Bill.
Do you feel violated?
I mean,
Dan?
I actually feel pretty proud that we did, to be honest with you. You know, and for those that don't follow us on TikTok, why the hell aren't you? But go check it out. Bill does a daily commentary on various issues. And the one we got violated on, of all things, was he was talking about North Korea firing artillery shells into South Korea. It was about as innocuous a video. Basically, we were just telling people about it.
They didn't do it.
And they violated us for that. And now, now that I'm talking and thinking about it, who runs TikTok? Oh, wait, the Chinese. They might not want their fellow North Korean allies.
Yeah, remember, at the end of the video, I kind of tied it to the Biden administration and their feckless running of the world.
Well, that could be. But anyway, so if you're not following us on TikTok, head on over to TikTok and check that video out, because hopefully it'll be back up soon. And also check us out on Twitter, because there is a troublemaker that makes comments for us on Twitter. I can neither confirm or deny that it's Greta. No, it's me. So anyway, we're on the show. Excited to be back. Where we want to start off?
I believe you were saying you had an issue with the budget.
An issue? I got a lot of issues with the budget. So for those that don't know, let's call it tentative agreement has been reached between the two parties for the federal budget. And I'm going to preface what I'm saying by quoting one Chuck Schumer, who's the head of
affectionately known as
Upchuck, who is the head of the Democratic Party and the head of the Senate, who, and I quote, said, "It's a good deal for Democrats and the country." So if he thinks it's a good deal for them, odds are it's not so good a deal for the people. So I just wanted to kind of touch on some of the highlights. I've just started delving into it yesterday. I've been watching some videos on it, and a couple points that I want to make. One, we're sending another over $100 billion to Ukraine in there, and approximately $15 billion to Israel. I the 15 to Israel, all right, okay, but another $100 billion to Ukraine? That's insane to me. Now we're well over $1 trillion going to Ukraine. A couple other things. Your boy Johnson, our hero, saw a video with him, and I had to write it down as I was listening to it, and I had to rewind it. Said that it's great because we saved $10 billion. He quoted $10 billion in savings, and another $6 billion in the COVID clawback. So a total of $16 billion in savings he was touting on a budget of $1.6 trillion. Anyone want to do the math on that?
Well, that's like saying I saved enough money to buy a stick of bubble gum based on the budget.
The way I was going to equate it is that's one drop of water in an entire Olympic swimming pool. I mean, it works out to like 0.00001% or whatever it is. I'm doing the math in my head. My point being, they're missing an opportunity again to stand firm. The right caucus, what's the caucus they call it in the House? The right-wing one?
The Freedom Caucus?
Freedom Caucus, thank you, is up in arms over it. And a lot of the information I got is from videos from them that I was watching. And they were also quoting, for those that don't know, the deficit hit $34 trillion now. And they're projecting somewhere around another $2 trillion this year. Fiscal year. So the fiscal year federal, for those that don't know, starts in October.
Correct.
And they're well over $500 million in the deficit. So you multiply that's one quarter. So October to December, well over $500 million deficit. Times 4 is $2 trillion. So we're looking at that's a 30.
I got a different way to illustrate what you're talking about.
Please do.
Make people understand. If you put the 1.6 trillion and then you take the 1.6 billion and just drop the zeros that match, what we're saying is we're going to spend $1,600 and we're going to save $16.
It's insanity, isn't it?
But that's a very simple way of understanding it.
Yeah.
It's not even 1%.
And now think about that if you're in terms of your credit card, right? If you are on a household budget, what was the number? 1,600?
$1,600 versus a savings of $16.
So that would be like going to, what's your favorite store, Greta? Target?
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm just picking on.
You're going to get in more trouble.
Let's say we go to Target, we're going to spend $1,600, and then the wife comes home and says, "Yeah, but I saved 16." I mean, how do we sustain this, guys? I mean, all joking aside, how do we, the people, sustain this? Because now we're looking at potentially $1 trillion a year just in interest.
Yeah, we are.
I don't. Where's the Republican Party on this? Why aren't they holding back?
Well, that's what the election of 2024 is all about. And that includes replacing Republicans who don't want to do what they need to do.
But that would include Johnson, because he
that can be done very simply by the caucus there.
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't require the 2024 election. It requires a couple of those people to say we don't want him anymore. And I understand there's some talk about it.
Really? I have not heard that.
Yeah, there is some talk of, as few of the real hardcores are talking about taking him down and bringing somebody else in. Question is who will they accept is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to, what's the phrase you use, herd wildcats or something like that? Trying to get the entire party to back it. I just, I'm sitting here.
Cats?
Well, that's it. Thank you. I'm trying to just, in my mind, go, at what point do we deal with this deficit? At what point do we stop spending literally $1 to $2 trillion more a year than we take in? By the way, they're expecting and are already seeing record revenues from taxes.
Not an argument.
It's just, let's keep pushing it down the road. And there's going to be that come to Jesus moment. And I don't think it's that far off. Are we going to end up like Greece? Going bankrupt?
We may be lucky to end up like Greece. We're heading to banana republic status, not only financially, but and on the basis of how we run our country.
Agreed. But what's the solution? How do we get, the Democrats aren't going to stop being Democrats. We all know that, right? How do we get the Republican Party to dig their heels in, to do what the Freedom Caucus wants to do? Because
the problems exist. You have to get people in every part of the country to elect people who say they're going to do the right thing, and then if they don't, get them out. But in some cases, they're not even putting the right people in who say they're the right things. I mean, if you're electing people, for example, that are running on the basis of being anti-Trump, and the reality is he is the leader of the party, whether you like it or not, then maybe we need to find someone else in those positions. And as it happens, people can lie, and they do, or they get sucked up in what's going on when they get to Raleigh, but not Raleigh, but
careful there, Bill. But you're going somewhere I was going to go, though, which is we live in North Carolina, all three of us. If you look at North Carolina, balanced budget, how much, a ton of money in reserve,
something like $4 to $6 billion.
If the Republican Party can do that in North Carolina, Florida's another example.
Without a Republican governor.
How the hell are they not going up the ladder with it, is where my point is, right? It's not, you can't say they don't know how to do it, because they've proven they have. I just named 2 states, there's others. But yet they get to the federal and they become Democrats. I blows my mind.
Well, that's because not every Republican state is as red as other states. Let's be honest about it. You've got a Maine group, which is best a liberal Republican place. New Hampshire, the same difference. And you go to the more, you go to Tennessee, North Carolina now, you go to Florida, you go to Texas. Those are red Republican states, and they will fight to the end. But even in there, You have, places like Austin in Texas, which will elect a local liberal Republican because that's what their beliefs are in that area.
I hear your point, but why can't we get the party to be like the North Carolina Republican Party and get the job done? And I'm going to give them all the credit in the world. They've done a magnificent job, as you pointed out, with a Democratic governor. Now we have to be honest and say we have a supermajority, so we can override him at our will. But you hear them at the federal level. They want to play nice with the Democrats. They're so afraid of stirring the pot. You know, the turtle being the classic example of it. How do we get them? You're talking about getting elections, but has that worked in the last 30 years?
Has in North Carolina.
Exactly, but not at the federal level, right?
Again, but the problem you have is uh, you need to, the people there, people elect. Republican Party does not nominate people to run. So if people are going to run in those states and people there support them, you get what you vote for. And unfortunately, the rest of us pay for it.
So primaries are key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The critical issue. And the second part of primaries is you got to get your heads together and you got to not run a half a dozen conservatives against one moderate or two moderates because those conservatives split the vote and in goes the moderate or the liberal
Right,
Republican.
right. Greta,
So
what?
you kind of got to get their heads together. Greta, am I wrong?
Greta, what's your thoughts?
My thought is first, going back to the beginning of this discussion, I put absolutely no credibility into anything Chuck Schumer ever says because I have seen him pull the rug out from under so many people, even in his own party. Okay. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I also know that he is under an enormous amount of pressure from the White House to get some money to spend, okay? Because Joe Biden's got a lot of commitments out there, and as long as they're in CRA, he can't really deliver on them. So I don't, I don't fault Speaker Johnson for making a good faith effort to pass a budget, but it ain't passed yet.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting part.
God knows what sort of background machinations and discussions are going on with the Freedom Caucus or in the Democrat Party. But I know that if I had to look at the court and see the two players, and the one I think is under the most flame right now, to me, is the Democrat Party because their numbers, they're getting killed nationally, right? On polls, they're coming across as an evil party of elitists, and they're good at it. I mean, it's like they're proving it to us. And I think they're just under a ton of pressure. Joe Biden, if you think about it, I mean, he's running out of things to run for reelection on. I mean,
He's
what's he
got
going to run?
he's got nothing at this point. We're honest. So there was talk that I saw that the party is trying to tell him to shut up about Bidenomics because the more they try and push Bidenomics, the lower their poll numbers go. Because how do you say to people the economy's doing great, and then they go to the grocery store that weekend and they're spending another $20 on the same groceries they got 2 months ago?
And they're deciding whether to pay the light bill or buy food.
Exactly. It's not resonating. It's backfiring. So yeah, to Greta's point, he's out of things. I think at this point he can't run on the border. I mean that he's polling lower on the border than anything.
Pretty much.
The economy's right there with it. Last numbers I saw, he was polling around 28, 29% on those things.
And I want to talk to those 28 or 29%.
Yeah. Well, I got into a debate with one, Bill, where they're like, the economy's great. And I'm like, give me some examples of how it's great. They went right to the unemployment number. And I shredded it. I'm like, okay, well, number one, that number's not a valid number because anyone who's not looking for a job but is not working is not counted. And there's over 7 million men from 20 to 35 that have opted out of the workforce. They're not counted in the unemployment number. And it also doesn't take into account that most of the jobs that were recovered after COVID are part-time, not full-time.
Well,
So
that goes back to Obamacare, where 30 over 32 hours required you to provide insurance.
absolutely. And as a small business owner, I hate to break it to you, but there were people that I kept under the 32 hours because I would have been required in New York State to cover them. I couldn't afford that. I had two options at that point. I cut them to 30 hours, which is what I did, and give them something, or I bankrupt the company because the cost for the care was, to be honest with you, was probably going to work out to somewhere around 50% of our revenue. And you can only increase your revenue so much in that type, it was a fitness business. So if I
Yeah,
say, if
and
I,
in general, 80% of your budget in a regular thing is personnel and support and whatever benefits they're getting.
it's not that high, but it's not far from it. But, you look at it from a business standpoint, it's not sustainable. And I think that's the other issue that they're not talking much about, I don't think, with regard to Biden's economy. But businesses are struggling, small businesses in particular. I talk to small business owners every single day, and it's bad. It's really bad. And I'm not talking just local to where I am, I'm talking nationwide. This thing in California where they're now going to pay the fast food workers $20 an hour, they're done. I mean, you got to look at it from this perspective. The Democrats' argument is it's only affecting the larger corporations, McDonald's, Hardee's, those, In-N-Out Burger was one of the ones they cited. But if you can go to McDonald's and make $20 an hour, are you going to go to Joe's Sandwich Shop and make 12? No. So they're not going to be able to get employees, or they're going to have to up to pay the same 20, and they can't afford it. They're going to be bankrupt. Pizza Hut laid off 1,200 delivery drivers already. I don't know what they're going to do as far as running on the economy at this point. And it goes back to the budget too. Do you think the budget as it stands, let's assume it goes through the way it stands, what kind of effect do you think it has on the presidential?
I think the Democrats are going to try to bury the budget, bury the economy behind, and they're going to run on an anti-Trump thing. He's bad for democracy. He's a dictator. And unfortunately, he came out the other day and said, I'm going to be a dictator for one day when I do X, Y, and Z, and that's it. And I'll go back to running the country there. But they know they can't win on the economy. They know they can't win on the border. So what they're going to have to do is they got to create fear, which is what they're very good at. And I really think they're going to be coming after him, Trump, and what Trump is going to do to the people if he gets reelected. And that's what they're going to hoping they can swing enough uninformed or the ill-informed to vote that way.
The irony being that everything they're claiming Trump is going to do, they're already doing it.
Or have done, yes.
Or have done. Any thoughts on that, Greta?
So I think the boy cried wolf too many times. Of course, they're going to go after Trump. They're absolutely always going to go after Trump. But then again, I mean, there's one thing I see every day in my mind's eye. I look at the disheveled state of our cabinet departments, defense, DHS, state, all of them. And I see the kind of crazy stuff that's going on. And I know that we are just one goof away from a big disaster in our federal government. And that creates even more nervous tension among all the politicians. But I just don't think they're winning on the Trump argument anymore. I think they've hounded him and chased him as long as you can. And now people are just going, well, yeah, but at least I could afford to eat.
And
right? At least I could travel. At least there weren't millions of people coming across my border.
Yeah, but we still have the issue that until enough people are hurt by the economy, it's not going to change much.
You got to suffer.
I think we're there. I really do. I do believe we're there. And on that note, guess what? It's time for our first break already. Time sure does fly, man.
Time flies when we're having a good time.
Apparently, we like to talk quite a bit. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to Reclaiming America.
Is that a Lori joke?
But okay, I'm going to leave that one in so she hears it.
Welcome back to Reclaiming America. Dan, Greta, and I are discussing the issues around the world, and I would say simple solutions to them if there are any simple solutions, but common sense solutions, which we've all agreed common sense is not that common anymore. But we'll go with there from
I,
there.
I was
I'm going
about
to
to
take
say,
us,
what common sense?
okay. I'm going to take us internationally for a little bit. And I'm going to take on the fact that we increasingly are having problems with Saudi Arabia, who was once under Trump, our best friends again, and pumping out whatever we needed whenever we needed it. And why we're suddenly having this chilling of relations, and they're actually looking to the Chinese and other places for support. And obviously, the first answer is the feckless Biden administration, but we need to dig into the and see exactly what's going on. If you go back to about 2014, the Saudis and the Houthis have been fighting a war against each other for all that time. Under Trump, he made them terrorist organizations and he cut them off. And Saudi, was bellying up to us and doing what we needed to do because he understood the necessity of what's going on. Enter Biden. Biden and his leadership and winking, and nod, so to speak, have decided that they're no longer terrorists. And not only are they not terrorists, but that opens up the door for massive donations from our country to support them. Now, just where do you think Saudi's going to go with that? It's caused a tremendous rift in our relationship, which is getting wider every day. And we're going to lose more and more of the Middle East as long as these people do what they think is right, which is invariably wrong.
Greta, what are your thoughts on it?
It never ceases to amaze me how hard we work to push the Saudis away when they are actually one of the people you can work with in the Middle East. And that's pretty much what we did. I'm not excusing what they did with that Mr. Khashoggi, the reporter, any of that, but we can't get past our own moral high ground in any place. We can't put ourselves in another country, in another culture. And so we push them away. So when Donald Trump left, after the Abraham Accords and all this great stuff that was going on, and then Trump leaves, they're not going to trust Joe Biden not to come back at them with all this bad Bernard Khashoggi stuff. Of course, they're looking for support. Jesus, they're building skyscrapers into the sides of mountains right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're reinforcing a lot of their borders. Yeah, I think they're as nervous as the rest of the world, guys.
And you make a great point. Under Trump, those accords were being signed, and almost every Arab country was coming on board with it. And we would have had as close to peace in the Middle East as we've ever been since the 1948 when they were initially born. So, but unfortunately, Winkin, Blinken, and Nod, and you can pick president and vice president to fit the other two with Blinken, have managed to screw that up in a great way and has taken us again to the edge of massive war.
Well, I would argue we're there. You talk about the Abraham Accords, you talk about the Saudis. We've talked about this on the show. Many people believe this is true, that the whole Israel-Hamas war, it was started to prevent Israel from being recognized by Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I think it's a fair thing to consider. And you're looking at we're doing military strikes now into Yemen. Greta talked about what the Saudis are doing. Nervousness in the Middle East is never a good thing. And I could see this escalating so fast in a matter of hours, potentially. If let's say they got the Houthis got lucky and managed to hit one of our ships. I don't think there's a realistic shot they will. But what if they did? Does
I don't know if you heard today, speaking on them, the British and the Americans have gotten together and they've actually started attacking the Houthis.
Yeah, they have. That's what I was talking about. They've gone into Yemen. There's multiple carrier strikes being made. There was videos on YouTube this morning of them doing that. Again, it's just another escalation. And at some point, you can only touch the fuse so many times before it's actually going to light and then explode. And it's
And the
scary.
good news is there's a number of fuses to be lit around the country, around the world. So it's not just in the Middle East, because we have artillery rounds going off in North Korea to South Korea, which is another fuse just looking to get started.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in our own country, and I'm taking it back to us a little bit, that porous border, which is secretly closed by President Biden and, of course, his czar, Vice President Harris. Uh, the reports this week alone, 16,000 Chinese caught in the last month coming across the border. Operative word in the sentence, caught.
Yeah, that's
Another
a
40
fraction.
today were caught in one of the South American countries coming in a bus, and they've been detained in that country. Exactly why are we having all these Chinese come in here? You add that to they're doing a lot of research around our bases. They're buying a lot of land around our bases. Are we looking at a coup d'etat where they're going to plant everybody ready to go and make us totally ineffective when something happens? And the worst part of it is we don't have to wait to be ineffective. Our leadership is doing that for us.
Yeah, and then add to that the amount of fentanyl coming across the border. If you want to argue against, we shouldn't keep the immigrants out or whatever, they never want to talk about the fentanyl problem. And it is killing millions and millions of Americans. But you don't hear about it in the mainstream media, and you're not going to. All of this is adding up. And you think about it, to your point, Bill, the fentanyl problem directly relates to, because who's the one the most affected about it? The younger people, the draftable age, the ones who are going to go
When you
fight.
go to New York City again, talking what you're talking with New York City and illegals, and I'll use the term, I'll get banned someplace, but they're illegal aliens. Uh, the stats came out the other day. 85% of the illegals in that city are not being shipped up from Florida and Texas. They're being sent by the feds. So
Right.
they're there. You start looking at what's going on. Brooklyn High School. There was a storm coming through there. Tent City up in Floyd Bennett Field was afraid. So they kicked all the kids out of the high school, took it over, put all the people in there, and told the kids they're going to go back to remote learning. Just making it worse. And what I understand has gone beyond that. They're not looking anytime soon to move those people out of the high school. They're going to look at leave, and they actually canceled the sports for the high school for the rest of the year, which is just adding it. Go to that in Brooklyn again, in one of the high schools. Qatar funds a number of cultural classes that are being offered around the world, around the country, but in Brooklyn in particular, was found out that when they put the map up for their cultural study, one little problem, when you look at the Middle East, there's no such thing as Israel. It's marked Palestine. But that's what they're teaching, and that's what they're teaching our kids, and we're doing nothing about it. And the flow across the border is ridiculous. I can't even say it's stupid, but we can't control what we catch, forget what we haven't caught.
Well, to that point, they estimate 1 to 2% is the number of what they catch. So if there's 10,000 crossing the border, that means it's actually more like what, 100,000? It's, or no, it'd be a million at that point. It's just when you hear somebody like Schumer and Biden and Harris and all of them going, we're trying to help people, we're trying to benefit the world, but how in long term it's going to end up destroying this country, and then who's going to be the policeman for the world? They don't. This is part of. I honestly believe at this point this is a planned way to destroy the United States, and it's working.
And again, go back to globalism.
It is. That's ultimately what it is. But short-sighted thinking, I think. You
No, I
know,
don't think it's short-sighted. I think it's long-term planning. If you're not, you can't get the entire one world government run by the UN as long as you have exceptionalism in at least one country. And so we have to bring that country down to the other level so we can grow with this one world government or the UN uh, as we currently have it, which is a disaster looking for a place to happen. And every time they touch something, they make it worse. Uh,
and I agree with that point, but the country they're messing with has a tendency to not stand for that stuff. And at some point, the populace is going to say enough's enough. And we're very close to that point, in my opinion.
Part of the populace, but we're also very close to having a lot of the kids they've been training for decades in positions of power.
Yeah, I've heard that, and the other argument is they've been indoctrinating them, and I think it worked with the millennials. But if you start looking at Gen Z, they're more conservative than anyone but the boomers at this point.
I agree.
It's starting to backfire. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of pain coming before it's fixed, but it's. I think the next 10 months are going to determine a lot of it. Who becomes president? If Trump or whoever is running for the Republicans, if for some reason it isn't Trump, doesn't take the office, we're done. And the unfortunate thing is, if they do take the office, I also think we're done because the left is never going to stand for it at this point. It's going to make 2020.
January 6th will be happening on 2025, January 20th.
Exactly.
And we'll see how many of those people get locked up.
Exactly. Guess what, guys?
Greta hasn't said anything. That's what you're
Well,
trying
that's
to say?
true too, but it's also time for our next break.
I want to go let Henry in so he can join us. So let's take a break.
All right, so we'll take a couple of minutes break, and then we'll be back. And I think, Bill, you've got another topic to cover, correct?
Oh, yeah, the Army and WHO, the World Health Organization.
Who's on first? All right.
Who, where, and how.
All right, we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Reclaiming America. Hey everybody, welcome back to Reclaiming America. We're having quite the show today, talking a lot of different topics. Bill, I'm going to throw it over to you because you have our next topic as well.
Well, actually, I'm going to just tee it up and give it to our good friend Greta because both of us have military background and we need to just kind of address it a little bit. The United States Army, actually the military, is coming out and they're very, very upset because they're not meeting their recruiting goals. And basically, when you look at the breakdown, the Hispanic and Black enlistments are flat. They're getting the same numbers they always have, but they're losing a lot of, quote, white volunteers, end quote. And of course, the blame for it goes to the conservatives who are talking about the wokeness in the military. So anyway, I teed it up, Greta. It's yours.
Okay, so nobody in their right mind would walk into this environment right now where, as a matter of fact, I saw an article today, and I think it was some lady at Johns Hopkins or something who was talking about how whites are evil, men are evil, all this is evil. That's all the talk that's going around in our federal government, right? So who would be motivated to join the military if you're white? As far as the Blacks and Hispanics, who in their right mind would put their life on the line knowing that their current government is either going to get them really hurt or really killed? And the current government's getting really good at that. Okay, they're developing a rep. I wouldn't want my kid to do it right now. Would you?
No, I think you're saying it quite appropriately. We have a possibility of war on many fronts. We're not physically capable of doing that with where we are today and with our troops. And unfortunately, we've already proven that we can't support our people, nor will we back them up. And if that's the case, then I can understand why recruits are dropping out and not signing up.
Do you
The
guys
optics are not good.
think that this is, because you mentioned the racial side of it, But do you think this is more a case of the other things you're talking about, which is the possibility of having to go and fight, and that it's being disguised as a racial issue?
I don't think it's a racial issue in that if you look at the numbers that they're publishing, their numbers, their recruitment of blacks and Hispanic is flat, which means it hasn't dropped. It hasn't gone up. It's just there. It's consistent. The only thing that's changed, which is dropping through the basement, is white recruitment.
Well, the reason to address that, and this is my line of thought, and I don't, it could be completely wrong. A lot of people, at least in my generation, joined the military because it was an opportunity to better yourself. It was, you could make more money, have a steady job, that kind of thing. Get out of a bad environment, bad neighborhood, whatever. So I would think that that's still the case. Maybe not. And is that why Hispanic and Black is still maintaining flatlined? Or is it just, it is a racial thing where the whites are just saying, no, I'm not going to deal with it? I honestly don't know. I'm asking you guys, as you're far more experts on it than I am.
Ready, yours.
I think that universally, no matter what category you fall into, what you see is a bunch of people getting hurt and killed. What you see is there's no percentage in it for you. Doesn't matter your color, your background, whatever. I mean, okay, yes, the benefits are great. But the kind of people that are still going into the military right now are people who want to go to law school or people who need somebody to pay for their medical school education or what have you. But your standard line troops, they don't see. I mean, the way some of these kids look at it is I can get killed in my own neighborhood. I don't got to go halfway across the world to get blown up in a foreign country. And I mean, it's not like there's no jobs. Yeah, sure, there's menial jobs here in America, but why would you put your neck out for this government? There's such low confidence in their decision making.
And beyond that, you take a look at the number of warriors, for want of a better term, who walked away with some of the mandates for shots. And they said, no, I'm not doing it. And, they've seen the light, the government now, and they've come back and said, oh, please come back to us. We'll fix your records. We'll make sure it's not held against you. But these men and women have lost X number of years of credit, probably promotion and rank, whatever else. And they still see what's going on with the gender issues, with the cross-dressing issues, with the fact that instead of it being a fighting force, it's a testing ground for social change.
The social experiment, sure.
Right.
You just kind of triggered a thought in my mind, Bill, along those lines. So, my first wife, her father was in the Navy, career man, became a recruiter towards the end, right? Is that lack of NCOs, because they're the ones that do the most of the recruiting, they all left because of the COVID shots and all that. Is that having a possible effect on recruitment? Because, I think back to Ken, and he tried to recruit me even, because they have to make their quotas or they're screwed. But I gotta believe that dearth of knowledge and ability to recruit, is that part of it? What do you think?
Ready, you first.
Recruiting command has always had problems. I had a really close friend of mine who worked for them for many, many years in like a support role, IT role. Recruiting command historically has had, of any organization, or shall we say profession, at least in the Army, a higher suicide rate, a lot of pressure, because it's like they're like car salesmen. They're trying to meet goals monthly, quarterly, annually, what have you. And their whole lives and promotion and opportunities are based on that. If you've already been put through the whole COVID thing and you just said, I've had enough, and you're out, yeah, I would say a lot of your very experienced non-coms, they're gone. And I don't see that this government has made any effort to recruit, retain these experienced veterans. I just don't see it.
And you make
No,
a You make a good analogy there, though, Greta. That strikes with me as someone who didn't serve in the military. Cars, it's equivalent of a car salesman. I think that's a great way to put
Yes.
it. And if they're not enthusiastic about their job, how can they be show that enthusiasm to a potential recruit to get them to sign
But
up?
beyond, but beyond that, look at what Greta's talking about when she mentions, and I've mentioned all those people that left because of the shots, etc. Pick 6,000, 10,000 people that go back to their hometowns around the nation, and they're all respected for what they've done. They have a People will listen to them when they get home. And what are they saying? Don't go in that military today because it's woke and it's a problem, and it's not the military I signed up for or mom and dad served in.
Yeah, we were talking about that off air. I was telling you about a guy I know, and he's on Twitter, and he was a lifer, just like you guys, and he is adamantly posting virtually every single day, "Do not join the military."
The military I left 20 years ago, the military I retired from looks nothing like the military we have today. Nothing.
I
Zero.
agree.
How do we fix it?
There's no
Oh,
short-term fix.
I'll tell you, well, I know how you start. First, you got to wipe out the current administration because they're not interested, by the way. They're about as interested in fixing the problems in the military as Hillary Clinton was. Okay. I mean, they have no interest. The military is peons to them. They're peasants.
Well, let's take that a step further. They're about as interested as Hillary Clinton was fixing Bill's problems.
Right. Exactly. And I just don't, yeah, I don't see anybody in this administration who's got the you know what's to stand up to the administration. I mean, I don't, I'm sure there's good leaders still in the Pentagon, but it just, people start scratching their head when the Secretary of Defense just disappears off the radar, right? And for good, bad, or indifferent, I'm sure there was good intention to, have an acting and hopefully all the correct, appointments and acting and the letters were signed and in place. But I mean, how does it come across when, Joe's in the Virgin Islands, sec death is
Was that an Epstein joke?
not to be found. Okay, nowhere to be found. No, in a
Careful,
dangerous
Bill.
world.
Careful.
There's strike three.
let me ask
And
you. Let me ask you a
what's
question.
the state doing that whole time? He's flying around the Middle East to Mexico and this, that, and the other, and they won't even put an American flag up for him when he's meeting with the
Yeah, I saw
Qatari.
that picture. Yeah,
Okay,
they put up the Palestinian flag. They would not put an American flag up with them with Lincoln sitting there.
Let me ask you a question because it kind of to Greta mentioned this. So there are quality people sitting in the Pentagon. I have no doubt of that. I'm sure you don't either. But knowing what they know and knowing what the higher ups, they're pushing the DEI in the military. How those I gotta believe, and maybe I'm wrong. That's why I want to get your opinion on it. I gotta believe those people they got their head down. They're not going to make any waves. They're not going to speak up. They're going to get their time in until they retire. Or do you think behind the scenes, they may not publicly say anything and they may not be able to, but do you think behind the scenes they're trying to make changes to save the military? What would you say to that?
there's no question in my mind. I mean, where are a lot of these leaks coming from about the kind of mandates they're putting out in the military, about the Lloyd Austin situation? They always come from the internals. And in the very same way that people leak things, what was the guy's name at the FBI? Comey, is leaking through his buddy at one of the major journalistic type agencies. I mean, that's two can play that game. Okay. And they are going to play that game. They're going to play that game heavy, just like the IRS whistleblowers.
Yeah,
They're
but
going to lay it out.
Greg, they also forced a lot of conservative generals, who you will, full birds, into retirement.
Yes.
They forced them out, and they promoted people with like thoughts. And don't forget, from Bird up, it takes a direct vote for Congress by name. It's not just going in front of a committee and just getting it approved. It is actual a name issuation. And when the government is sitting there and you have Biden and his crew picking the names are going to go up there and the Democrats are approving it in the Senate, we're not going to get the people we need there to do what we need to do. They were going to be changed.
Yeah, they're not promoting warriors. They're not, that's not what they're doing. Okay. They're promoting anybody who agrees with them.
Right. Exactly.
And Barack Obama did the same thing. He did the exact same thing. Okay. Which is, I think, part of how this mess that we're in right now started a while back. Takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, but apparently it did get built here.
Let me ask you one final question because we only got about 3 minutes left. Let's say the current administration is not going to do anything to fix it. I think we all agree on that. Let's say Trump becomes president and starts reversing this stuff. How long does it take to really effectively reverse what's going on in military speaking? Well,
8 to 12 years.
that long. Wow.
Well, okay, so Donald Trump being reelected would serve what, 4 years, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's got 4 years. And the idea being hopefully that whoever he takes on as a vice would have a good shot at continuing the party and keeping the momentum going. But I mean, you're talking about a bloodletting of proportions like I've never seen. You're wiping out all kinds of senior executives and general officers and cabinet department people who are known partisan, who are not doing their job, who are not doing the right thing by the American people. That is an awful lot of firing to be done.
And with what Greta is saying is those numbers are probably valid as far as years are concerned. I agree with. I was going to say 10 myself.
Mm.
And one of the issues that we've never had prior to Obama and now him is, when someone took over who didn't like the military and they cut the military, they left the people there. They just ignored them, for want of a better term. And what was available then is when, for example, when Reagan came in, the right people were still there to suddenly do what needed to be done. They suddenly had the power to do it. We don't have that now because those same people have been removed and they've been sent away and they've been replaced with puppets.
Mm-hmm.
Puppets to the changing of the guard, puppets to social change, puppets to social experimentation, and the military comes second rather than social change. So that's an issue that may take decades to fix.
And that's why I wanted to ask the question, because it seems like it's gone the other way rather quickly, right? They were able to damage it quickly, but it's going to take, for lack of a better term, an entire generation basically to reverse it, which, again, with all that's happening in the world, is a scary proposition.
Well, just keep in mind, you had 8 years with Obama, you had 4 years with this guy, and don't forget they're promoting ranks all the way up.
Right.
And there's an issue because now you got to get those ranks filled and bring them up, and those people are not going to be generals in 2 years.
Right.
No, it's the ones that are going in as second lieutenants now that have to work their way through the system when the time comes,
And some of the majors and captains who will eventually get up to the top and light colonels, but that's going to take time. It's not going to be something instantaneous, and that's a problem. And that's a problem that we're going to have to deal with, and hopefully we'll survive till it's fixed.
And on that note, guys, guess what? It's time to wrap things up. It's been a great hour. Covered a lot of territory. So, Bill, I'm going to put you on the spot again. If people wanted to follow us, because they're going to like and share and subscribe, right? Because if they don't, we're going to find you. No. How can people follow us, Bill?
Well, they can just tune in anytime I say something, and it's right. It's 100% fair. You can go to Spotify. You can go to TikTok. You can go to Truth or
no, not Truth. No, we're not.
Not Truth.
TikTok.
I said TikTok.
TikTok, Spotify, Twitter, Twitter,
Rumble,
and Rumble. Yes, we're not on Truth, and I don't think we'll ever be on Truth. And nothing against Truth, but there's only so much time in the day, guys. Awesome conversations today. Positive stuff, some really scary stuff at the end there. But I think we are helping people to understand the realities of things. And that's why I say to you guys watching this, if you've watched this far, you got to hit that like button. You got to subscribe, because us three are going to be chatting for the next few months. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. The next 10 months are going to determine the fate of the United States. I truly believe that.
And I was saying the other night at a meeting, we always grew up saying that this election is the most important election in our lifetime. And unfortunately, it's always right. We are really at a crossroad that we need to fix things, or there may not be a country after this.
Couldn't agree more. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap things up. Make sure you come back next week. And thanks for watching Reclaiming America.